What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to Down to the Wire. I'm your host, Brian Costa, and today we have an amazing episode in store for you guys. I'm recording this episode a little bit later in the day. Start time for this episode is approximately 9:12 p.m. here on Wednesday night at Bryant University. And today, crazy things have gone on today. I've had an incredibly busy day, but luckily I was able to get a guest for this episode today. He's coming all the way from Bridgewater State University, and his name is Sean Howe. Sean, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing really good, Brian. How you doing?
I'm doing amazing, man. I am, obviously recording this thing a little bit later. I'll have you kind of explain how you got into that. But first of all, Sean and I, we met each other through a close personal friend, Adam Wright. Met him through a house party that he had, way back when, kind of a social gathering that we kind of had. And, me and Sean were able to kind of meet through there. Sean expressed his interest in coming on a podcast, wanted to talk some football. And during the time, there was really no football going on. Unfortunately, it was a lot of off-season stuff. So it was really tough for me to kind of, figure out when I wanted to get him on. Luckily now with week 1 of the NFL season, officially wrapped and, football being back in a full swing, I'm really excited to have Sean on to discuss some of the latest stories. But before we do that, I'll have Sean kind of explain a little bit about himself athletically and, why, and, how we kind of came about this as well.
So I go to Bridgewater State, as Brian mentioned. I'm studying computer science, but I actually play football here, and I've played football since I was 10 or 11 years old. I've always had interest in it. So when I met Brian, and Brian came up to me and told me that he runs a podcast and he talks football, I love talking football. I've loved talking football my whole life. So Brian, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. I'm really glad to have you on as well, especially someone with football knowledge, and being able to actually say that you played collegiately is another thing itself. But we have a ton of awesome stories to get into in the NFL. But another interesting little turn on this is that, I've had a lot of fans of the show. I've had, obviously Justin Tucker of the Fumble Receipt podcast, who's a massive Ravens fan, obviously a bunch of Patriots fans. You yourself, however, you are a Miami Dolphins fan, which, is kind of the bane of my existence. At least you're not a Jets fan. We can all kind of, have some solace on that.
Poor Brian, we can agree.
Yeah, poor Brian Mucker, but yeah, at least you're not a freaking Jets fan. So, I at least have, some semblance of respect for you. But, I'll let, you've kind of, had to, go at a full on fights with us to explain why you are not a Jets fan, why you are a Dolphins fan. So, I guess I'll have you do it one more time. When it comes to just pretend that I'm confronting you yet again, man, why the hell are you a Miami Dolphins fan?
So the reason I'm a Dolphins fan is my father growing up was huge into players. He was a huge Dan Marino guy. And so he always picked the player. He did it for baseball too. He was a huge Derek Jeter person. And as they grew into the team, franchise players, he became a Dolphins fan through Dan Marino, a Yankees fan through Derek Jeter. And then eventually when I was born, I just fell right into that. And I've been in love with those teams ever since.
Yeah.
I love being the oddball.
It definitely is an oddball story. My friend Pat Edwards, he's a Green Bay Packers fan, more due to his parents kind of being from the location. I know my dad growing up was a Mets fan based on his geographic location. The other thing, he was kind of a player guy himself. He liked Carl Yastrzemski. So, but he was always kind of a Mets fan. But when he ended up coming to live in New England full time and live in Massachusetts, he eventually just said, all right, the players that I grew up in New York kind of, they're all starting to leave, like the guys like Mike Piazza, Darryl Strawberry rather, and other guys like that. All right, those guys are starting to leave. And he kind of migrated his fanhood to, just supporting the local teams because, he was, now going there through work functions. And that's how he kind of built his fandom here. And that kind of just translated onto me because I was born into it. But, little tidbit I saw on Dan Marino today. I believe that today is actually Dan Marino's 60th birthday. So shout out to Dan.
Dan's the man. I will say that.
60 years young today, and God damn it, got to keep those laces out. But anywho, we have some amazing content to get into for week 1 NFL news. And I think it's only appropriate to start with the major storyline going around New England. And that was the debut of Mac Jones. Obviously, Sean, you and I were able to go and watch this game together. We went over to Adam's house, had a nice little get together. We got to watch, obviously our two teams slug it out in a pretty nice, game. It was low scoring, but all in all, it was a great time. At halftime, we got to have a little pickup football game, and it was kind of a exchange of us just slinging it around the yard. I had a couple nice touchdown passes as well as you, and it was a pretty solid day.
I'd say so, but it was great. The good team came out on top. That's all I got to say.
Okay, yeah, shut the hell up. But anywho, getting into it, I will talk about Tua and Jalen Waddle and all them in a second. But coming into this game, the main story, and I mean, even as a Dolphins fan, you have to just acknowledge that the main story coming to that game was the debut of Mac Jones, and how is he going to compare? Because he's not even replacing Cam Newton. Like obviously he is the replacement to Cam Newton, but everyone has just said at this point he's the heir apparent to Tom Brady, and everyone wanted to see how is he going to compare coming into this game to replace the GOAT at quarterback, in my opinion. How is he going to be able to compare, when it comes to, actually performing at this level? And, he ended up going 29-39, had 281 passing yards, had one touchdown. It's a nice passing touchdown to Nelson Aguilar. Had also had kind of nice drop in pass to James White up the sideline. I'll get in my opinion. I'll get into my opinion in just a second. But what did you think about Mac Jones all in general as a Dolphins fan?
I mean, I'm going to say it was impressive. I didn't think it's his first game. He's going to be nervous. I didn't think it was going to be that close. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I also expected my own quarterback to play better, but that's for later. But Mac Jones looked good out there. I mean, Mac Jones didn't look like a rookie playing in his first NFL game. We can agree with that. He threw no interceptions, which is very rare for a quarterback in his first debut. I think his quarterback rating was 75 or 76.
Yeah, I'd have to look into the advanced stats on that, but I think his completion percentage was, just shy of 75%. So he had a pretty solid all around day.
That's impressive for a rookie.
Yeah,
that's impressive. That's a good day for some veterans nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that CBS Sports put out kind of a poll on it, and they ended up ranking, rookie quarterbacks debuts, and they had Mac Jones at a B, while they put guys like Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence at a D plus for Lawrence and a C plus for Wilson. So, he was able to, avoid a lot of the mistakes. A lot of people were saying that Zach Wilson just looks like a Jets quarterback at this point. It's kind of just already setting in for him. But I really liked what Mac Jones had to offer. I think that Bill Belichick played it very conservatively, decided, we're going to go a lot of runs here. And I will say, in my opinion, he gave Mac Jones a lot more leeway than I thought he was going to. I thought it was going to be a lot more run based. And I thought, it was going to, you weren't going to see Mac Jones, attempt anything over like 10 yards. He had I think he had a 20 something yard pass at one point. He, was, passing, for more than 10 yards, like, on more than one occasion, which surprised me. I thought Belichick was going to keep it relatively short. So, in the little amount I've seen so far, I'm pretty impressed.
Well, I mean, in classic Belichick fashion, Belichick doesn't, take the safe route. I mean, Belichick came back down against Atlanta 28-3. We all remember that. We are all there. Yeah. Belichick takes risks. So, I mean, obviously getting rid of Cam Newton was a risk because as soon as he got rid of Cam Newton, he had 100% committed to Mac Jones. But I think based on what we saw from Mac Jones on Sunday, I think Patriots have a lot to look forward to this season, even with the loss. Yeah, I think there's a lot to grow. The loss wasn't even his fault. And I think if you could fix the little things around him, he could be a franchise quarterback.
I'd have to agree with you there. I mean, again, I was seeing people pin this as kind of a moral victory for the Patriots. And as a Patriots fan, you don't really want to be taking moral victories. You want to be taking physical victories. But, after the terrible season that we had last year, I'll take a, kind of a little morale booster because, unlike Cam Newton last year where, he had a, decent start to the season, but for the majority of it, you went into those games, expecting it to be, below mediocre, and you knew it was just going to be disappointing. So to see kind of some flashes like that, I was pretty impressed by it. I will say that. Now, when it came down to it at the end, Damian Harris had that fumble that really ended up swinging the entire game. I ended up leaving it. I had already left Adam's place at that point, but when that went down, I mean, that's, as a Patriots team, the amount of penalties they had and the amount and just like the turnovers that they were allowing. I mean, Mac Jones had, a fantastic day, but he also had some critical errors at the beginning. He threw the ball backwards in a pretty, in a display that made him kind of look like he was, not really knowing what he was doing at the time. So there kind of has been a back and forth with it, but, I think if the Patriots were to clean that up, they'll be in for a decent season this year. What are your thoughts?
I mean, he had to shake out the nerves. Everyone has nerves. I had
Yeah.
nerves when I played in my first college game. We all got them. But I think he shook them off, that first half. And he came out. I mean, again, no interceptions. That's impressive. Most
Yeah.
people don't, you have to adjust to the speed of an NFL game. Just like when you go to college, you adjust to the speed of a college game versus a high school game versus a Pee Wee football game.
Yeah.
So I think that was impressive. I really think there's a lot to look forward to here with Mac Jones. Again, I'm a Dolphins fan.
Yeah.
And here I am telling, the open world can hear me say that I think my rival team has a potential new franchise quarterback. And I think Mac Jones could be the answer that New England's been looking for ever since Tom Brady left. Yes, there's pieces around it to be fixed, but the scoreboard, like you were saying, the scoreboard doesn't tell the whole story. It's what happened behind it. Mac Jones got increasingly better just throughout the duration of the game as it went.
Yeah.
And it's the pieces around him. And if those pieces fall into place, that team could be good. That team could very much end up in a wild card spot right behind Buffalo and could be a playoff team.
Yeah. Also, another topic in the game that I want to get to, obviously, being a Dolphins fan, there are a lot of things that you were looking on as well. How did you feel, as a Dolphins fan, watching Tua, watching Jalen Waddle make his debut? What were your thoughts on the game, from your team's perspective?
There was a few things. So Tua still looks, a little shaky. Obviously, there's been a lot of news about Tua in the offseason. Are the Dolphins going to keep him? Are they going to get rid of him? Is he the answer? Is he not the answer? And he has a lot to prove right now, and I don't think he necessarily proved that. I think he still has a lot to improve on. The question is, can he improve?
Yeah.
And I guess that's, waits to be seen. But to be honest, I didn't see much better out of Tua this past weekend than I did in a lot of his starts towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
The only thing that I can say was a little better was his reads. He wasn't as quick to pull the trigger, and he allowed plays to develop. But past that, I didn't see much improvement for a guy who had an entire offseason. As far as Jalen Waddle, he had that drop. I believe it was in the first half when they were driving the field. You could tell he was a little nervous. But then in the second half, he came out and he scored right on the opening drive of the second half to give Miami. It was to give Miami the lead, wasn't it? Because it was 10-10 at that point.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
So I'm happy with how Jalen Waddle looks. I'm happy with how the defense looked. The defense looked pretty solid. A few things we could tighten up there, but I don't know about Tua, man. I don't know if Tua is the answer.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions as to whether Miami should look at a guy like Deshaun Watson. I'm not even touch. I'm not even going to touch the legal whole crisis going on with him. But I know there have been talks in that area. So it's still kind of a up in the air situation with Miami right now. But we were talking about Mac Jones and him having an outstanding debut. Another quarterback who had another great debut. Not his first start in the league, but his first start with a new team. And that was Matthew Stafford. I mean, he made his debut for the LA Rams, on Sunday Night Football against the Chicago Bears, and he had himself a day, 2026, 321 yards, 3 touchdowns. Man, I don't know if you saw this game, but Matthew Stafford looked special in this game. He was amazing.
So I wasn't fortunate enough to watch it, but I did hear that it was the move to Detroit, or sorry, not the move to Detroit,
The move
to the
from
Rams.
Detroit.
From Detroit might have been a good move for him. And I think it just shows that he has more potential than he was allowed to showcase when he was in Detroit, and that he's a lot better of a quarterback. And what was holding him back was his team.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, Detroit is just such a hellhole of a franchise when it comes to basically any sports team at this point right now. But I saw Matthew Stafford come out there, and I'd heard I'd heard a lot of fans say like, oh, he's good in this area, he's good here, and you hear like a lot of NFC North guys talk up this Matthew Stafford game, but for a lot of people it kind of fell on deaf ears just because we just see this guy who has only led his team to the playoffs 3 times and has had a lot of has come up short a lot of the time, but I saw him come out in this game and he was absolutely incredible. Typically when he was in Detroit, he wasn't used to running a lot of the bootleg offense that's associated with the LA Rams, but he looks like a natural and he was, throwing some absolute darts and, frankly, looked spectacular. I think at this point, like, people were talking about how, the Bucks, the addition of Tom Brady, obviously they made some other great additions as well, but Tom Brady being the most notable one last year for the Bucks, was able to elevate them enough to get them to a Super Bowl. I'm starting to hear rumblings now that Matthew Stafford could be this for the LA Rams. They have a really good receiving core. Their defense is, very strong. And, I think that, the substitution for Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford could be game changing. I think that the Rams could be a very legitimate threat out of the NFC now.
I have to 100% agree with you there. I mean, again, it just shows that a quarterback, when people want to say, oh, who's the GOAT, who's this, who's that, he's only done this, he's only done that. It proves that it's the team around you that does everything. It doesn't matter how good you are as a quarterback. If the team around you isn't good, you're not going to be good. And we're seeing it right here unfold in front of our eyes. I mean, first game, not as a Detroit Lion, and look at the stat line, 3 touchdowns. I think we got a lot to see this year with the Rams now that they get a quarterback back there who can sling it. And I think Matthew Stafford's finally going to show off.
It's kind of a double-edged sword because, obviously, Matthew Stafford wasn't able to have a ton of success because he was able to, obviously he wasn't able to have a ton of success because, of the weapons around him. But at the same time, he was, still, revealed and kind of, he kind of had the allure of being, a very good quarterback. So, I still think that is the case with him. And, I think that he is only going to get better now. I think he's 33, but, watch out for him. He might, the best of Matthew Stafford might just be yet to come because, he finally now has a decent team around him.
I have to agree with you again. I think we're going to see something special out of him. I'm going to be 100% honest. I think we're going to see something special out of him this year. Now that he's finally somewhere where he can, it's kind of like, what's the thing they call it? Like when a lion's in a cage, the lion's trying to get out of the cage, and now he's been let out of that cage. Yeah. So now he can actually show off all this talent that he's been kind of glimmering through, and we've seen here and there while he was in Detroit. Now he can put it full on spotlight, and he can really show the NFL, yes, I'm an NFL caliber quarterback, and yes, I'm going to take this team to the playoffs, and yes, I'm here to play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can tell you this. I am beyond excited for what is about to go down. And even as a Patriots fan, I think the Rams are going to be a very fun team to watch this year. I cannot wait to see what happens with them. Another team that is on my radar as well right now has, basically when Drew Brees announced his retirement, the New Orleans Saints were immediately on everybody's radar. And with the whole situation of Hurricane Ida and everything going on there, with them now having to play in Jacksonville, all eyes were on the New Orleans Saints to see how Jameis Winston and that group could perform this year. And my God, they came out on Sunday and they were awesome. I know Jameis only threw for, I believe it was 148 yards, but I think he had 5 touchdowns against the Green Bay Packers, absolutely smoked them 38-3. And it was just a complete and utter beatdown for those guys. And, goddamn, the LASIK surgery for Jameis might have actually paid off. I didn't think that it was going to make the biggest difference, but I obviously in Tampa, he did have 30 touchdowns along with 30 interceptions, but he could be something to actually, he could be a legitimate threat this year.
I remember looking at the scoreline. Somebody had said it to me. It might've been Adam. And I was like, there's no way. There's just no way. There's no way that Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers only put up 3 points and they let up 38 points to Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
Because for me, when I heard Drew Brees was retiring, I thought that was the start of a rebuild in New Orleans, if we're going to be honest.
Yeah.
So when I saw the stats come out for this game, I almost fell over and started asking questions. Is this Green Bay just having a rough day, or is this something that nobody expected? New Orleans is going to come out better than they were with Drew Brees last year. Or what was it, 2 years ago?
Yeah, that's something I'll get to the Green Bay bit in a second too, but I was very concerned as to how they were going to do as well. I saw the first couple preseason games where Jameis was getting in there and he was absolutely slinging the thing. So, I had some, decently high expectations for Jameis coming in, but I was still always nervous just because I thought, he could revert back into Tampa Bay Jameis at any single moment, and he still could. But, from what I've seen so far, it looks like, he may have turned a new leaf, and getting out of Tampa is, was the best possible thing that could have happened to him. While, Tom Brady going there was the best possible thing that could have happened for him. So it's kind of an ironic little switch, but, I think that Jameis Winston, he could possibly be on the ropes for, I'd have to say at least comeback player of the year. I don't know how much further he'd be able to go beyond that, but early comeback player of the year. I know it's not an injury, but, to be able to come back and be this dominant, it's I'd put it up there.
When you saw that the Green Bay Packers were playing the Saints, If somebody asked you, what do you think the final score is going to be? How do you think Winston's going to do? I bet you it wouldn't be 5 touchdowns and an absolute blowout of the game.
Well, even if they said, hey, the Packers are going to play the Saints and the final score is going to be 38-3, like every person on earth would have thought that would have been the Packers, like the Packers that won that game. Like everyone would have thought that was the case. The fact that the Green Bay was squandered to only 3 points is ridiculous. I mean, I will get to that in just a second, but obviously all praise is up to all the praise to Jameis Winston. I know Drew Brees also came out after the game. He did end up saying, I guess the one thing the Saints were missing this entire time was a deep ball, because he was even kind of poking fun at his arm kind of waning towards the end. So there'll be a dangerous thing to watch, but you're absolutely right. I don't know what the hell was going on with the Green Bay Packers in this game. They just seemed dead in the water. I don't know what was going on with Aaron Rodgers. Had 2 picks, and ugly picks at that. It wasn't even like kind of just a batted ball up in the air that the defensive back came down with. These were ugly picks. This looks like Brett Favre, going across the field, throwing across his body type of picks. Like these were ugly interceptions. So are you concerned about Aaron Rodgers in this instance, or is it more the Green Bay Packers as a whole that have you concerned?
I mean, first off, I first want to say is I don't want to take any credit away from New Orleans. They played a wonderful game, but there's a lot of questions, that I raised, and I said these yesterday to Adam and Justin. Was does Aaron Rodgers really want to be there? MVP quarterback. He was MVP. You're going
Yeah.
to tell me that an MVP quarterback comes out against what would you call New Orleans, an average defense, above
I mean,
average
the Saints are fine. They're not terrible. So, but
but MVP quarterback.
Yeah.
What MVP quarterback's going to come out of this? Sorry, I should say, come into the season, not score a single touchdown, throw 2 interceptions, and look like he just didn't want to be there. And if you saw his body language as we went through, preseason and training camp and all that stuff, and you watched his interviews, it just almost seemed like he didn't want to be part of this team. He wants nothing to do with Green Bay. He just doesn't seem interested. You can just tell from his body language. He just doesn't look like he wants to be there.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this: the Saints have a decent defense, but I agree, they're not the 2000s Ravens or the '85 Bears. So, you do have to kind of look at Rodgers in this instance. I think that he does want to be in it. He's been kind of hyping up this whole Last Dance talk. With comparing himself to Michael Jordan and Devontae Adams doing, being Scottie Pippen. I think Randall Cobb threw in there and saying he was Ron Harper. So I do think Rodgers wants to take it seriously. But I don't know if it's the kind of thing where, when Tom Brady was getting towards the end, he was doing like a lot of the stuff like the Tom versus Time documentary, well, not obviously not towards the end, in general, because Tom Brady still looks like he could be in his prime. So I'm not like discounting him. And I'm not discounting Rodgers at a physical level. But, towards the end of Brady's tenure in New England, he was doing a lot of the Tom versus Time stuff, was doing a lot more, was being a lot more active on social media. Aaron Rodgers this offseason, for the most part was, very quiet, apart from his, Jeopardy, guest appearances, was being a little more active, but for the most part, was still being Aaron Rodgers. But, I think that he still wants to be in it, but I don't know. It's been a very weird road.
I mean, as a Green Bay fan, I definitely would ask the question, do you want to be here and do you want to be a quarterback? Because if I was a Green Bay fan, knowing I had supposedly an MVP caliber quarterback and I got blown out by the Saints, I'd have a lot of questions. I mean, Green Bay fans, as you know, are diehards. They live, eat, and breathe at Lambeau Field. And it's just, you got to ask what happened. Did
Yeah.
the defense, and obviously the defense didn't pull through. I mean, they gave up 38, but is that because, hey, if he doesn't care, I'm not going to care either? Like, is this coming from the top where, he's not showing leadership, so why do I care if he doesn't care? Like, where there has to be something stemming from somewhere. It feels like you don't just, get blown out 38-3 and just walk away and pretend it's a new week. Like, it feels like there has to be an element that we're not seeing or that's being hidden from us that's causing Green Bay to fall apart.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this: the one thing that you can, kind of say about the saving grace of the Green Bay Packers is, I do think that they still are a good football team. I think that they'll still be, fine this year. And, if they do manage to turn it around, the way you could look at it is like this. I mean, I don't know how aware of this you are, but, during one of the Patriots, Super Bowl winning seasons, they ended up, I think they faced the Bills opening day. It was actually, I believe, in 2003. So it was actually, they faced, so not only did they face Drew Bledsoe, who was playing for the Bills at the time, but right before the start of the 2003 season, they had cut Lawyer Malloy, their longtime safety, and one of the staples of their defense. And he went to the Bills in that very first weekend. It was kind of a revenge game against the Patriots, and they ended up beating the Patriots 31-0. It was a beatdown, and it was just an utter embarrassment. And obviously the Patriots were able to grow throughout that season, and I believe they also played the Bills the last game of the season as well, and they managed to beat them 31-0 in kind of a poetic victory. Now, I think this Packers team can definitely grow. I think that from speaking with multiple Packers fans, Pat Edwards being one of them that I've spoken with at length, you got to make sure that Rodgers isn't too dependent on Devontae Adams. He's got to be spreading the football around a lot more. Obviously, Devontae is your one, and you can make the case for him being the best receiver in the league. But you got to spread the wealth. Get Robert Tonyan involved in that offense. Have him run a little bit of the show. You got Randall Cobb back, so run him in the slot some more. So you do have some more weapons this year. So if you want to be successful, you got to do that. And obviously, the defense has to step it up too, because whatever you can say about the faults of Aaron Rodgers, if your defensive guys are allowing just that many points in general, obviously you got to let Rodgers has got to keep them in the game more, but the defense has got to pick up the slack as well.
No, and I 100% agree. I mean, it's a game of offense and a game of defense, and Rodgers only plays on one side of it. But I just think I just find it odd because you talk about the Patriots from, what was it, 2003?
Yeah, it was an early game. And coming off that too, the Patriots during that 2003 season, obviously won the Super Bowl during 2001. 2002 was a very weird year that not a lot of people talk about during the Patriots dynasty. They missed the playoffs in 2002. They went 9-7 and was kind of was the only Super Bowl hangover year that's really, ever been noted in Patriots history. And it's kind of been forgotten because they ended up winning 2 straight Super Bowls right afterwards. But that was what happened. Yeah.
No, I was going to say that. Let's look at that. Patriots came off a losing record. They came back out. They had a couple new pieces to the team, like you were saying. They put it together, and they went and won a Super Bowl. Here we are with the quarterback that's been in the league he's been there for what?
I mean, he's been in, I think, since 2005, I think came on, a little bit after that. So he's been in the league for a long while at this point, Aaron Rodgers.
So this is where I see the difference is in New England in 2003, you just had gotten Tom Brady had only been there.
He had been there since 2000, but he came on in 2001. He only started for 2 seasons at that point.
But at that point, so you have a 2-year starter at quarterback who now is the GOAT, but at the time was still learning and developing.
At the time, he was still relatively seen as a game manager. Yeah.
But you still have the team around him that you said had new pieces that was building up that season. Here we are with the Green Bay team that I don't want to say hasn't changed much, but you have a quarterback who's been there for 15 years. And it's hard to just believe that here's Aaron Rodgers. He's got the weapons. He's such a good quarterback. It's hard to believe that a guy who wants it that bad can't score a touchdown when he's been working with this offense for so long. It's just so hard. It's hard to grasp that you could play so poorly and claim to be an MVP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I won't say that Rodgers, that Rodgers' temper isn't wearing thin and he isn't, frustrated at all with this team. I think you'd have to be blind and deaf to not be able to tell that he hasn't made that assumption. He's definitely frustrated with the moves that this team has made. Obviously the drafting of Jordan Love was, kind of was like the big, climax that kind of set this whole thing off. But there have been a ton of other moves in general. He's been frustrated that the team didn't bring back guys like Jordy Nelson and other moves, accordingly. So, I'll have to think and see, it's going to be a very wild ride to see what happens. Another thing that you can say that was another, positive, I guess you can throw on the Packers for this year is the last team the Saints beat, the last team that the Saints beat 38-0 or 38-3 rather was the Tampa Bay Bucks last year. And obviously the Bucks went on to, beat them in the playoffs and have a great Super Bowl. But, so, it's a long season. It's, you have an extra game this year. So, if you're the Packers, hopefully you can try to throw this one out. And, I don't know who they're facing next week. I'll have to go look into that, but, hopefully they can make up for it this week.
I don't know if that's a game where you can just walk away and throw it away. I mean, I play football now, and we can't. If we lose 45 to, I don't know, 14 or 38-3, like in this, or whatever, we can't just throw that away. You just don't. It's one of those things where you just can't pretend there wasn't a lot of things that went wrong.
Oh no, no. Trust me, there are a ton of things that went wrong in that game, but I think that you want to hold on to the mistakes, and you want to be able to obviously improve from there. But at the same time, you don't want to like linger on it, and you don't want it to stay with you. You want to be able to say, all right, we had a very rough game. Had a lot of things went wrong for us, but at this point, what we need to do is we need to move on, and we need to now figure out like what the next course of action is for us. So obviously, you have to figure out where those mistakes went wrong, but you do have to get ready for their next game, which I did look up. It's against the Detroit Lions and Jared Goff at this point. So, hopefully could be a little bit more of kind of a show off game for them. Maybe they can gain some real confidence from that. So
I guess we'll have to.
Yeah.
Only
So
time we'll be able to tell what Rodgers is going to do.
Yeah. So that'll be something to look forward to. But another big story in NFL news that I wanted to get you on for was I put out a post on my Instagram talking about this, but you actually managed to and you ended up replying to it along with Matt, so he was able to get in and talk with this. But it came in after week one that the Washington football team, starting quarterback, the legend himself, Ryan Fitzmagic, is going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks with a hip injury. I don't know the full extent of it, but he's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks reportedly. And, as of right now, Washington is planning to start Taylor Heineke at quarterback next Sunday. So, it's a very delicate situation over there. I mean, we got to see Taylor Heineke at the end of last year, when Washington was basically exhausted all options at quarterback, and Heineke actually looked fairly good at quarterback. I will say that he looks like he could be, something decent. But, if you're Washington and you're actually trying to make a bid in the NFC East this year, which, every year can be a very winnable division, you kind of have to think about going out and getting a legitimate starting caliber quarterback. Now, I don't necessarily think that he's at this level anymore, but Cam Newton obviously was released from the Patriots. We talked about it when Mac Jones, got the starting nod and everything, being involved with that. But with Cam Newton coming back, would Washington be a possible fit for him? And do you think that Washington should take him on?
I don't personally. I mean, because here's the thing. If you take on Cam Newton, it's just a temporary solution until Fitzpatrick gets back. But even if you take him on, we saw how he performed in New England. What do they expect to get out of him? Because if you bring him in and he doesn't do anything well, you're better off giving Heineke the experience so that if this happens again, Heineke's ready.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like, if it was somebody else, so like Deshaun Watson or, a good quarterback, different story. We watched how Cam Newton performed with the Patriots. We know why the Patriots got rid of Cam Newton. We know how much of a character Cam Newton can be. And that's a lot for Washington to take on if it's only going to be a temporary plug until Ryan Fitzpatrick can get back.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'll say this. I think that if Cam Newton doesn't get a chance with Washington, then I think he's done as a starter. I will say that. That's my take, because Washington is the perfect situation for Cam Newton. Now I like Heineke as a starter as well, but for Cam Newton, if you're his agent, you're doing everything in your power to get him to Washington at this point. And obviously, why? He has the connection with head coach Ron Rivera, who has deep loving respect for him. He has obviously with Fitzpatrick being out the 6 to 8 weeks, it'd be a very different offense that you put in place. But with Rivera knowing Cam Newton's strengths and weaknesses, I think it would be able to play very nicely for him. Now, I'm skeptical, that Washington will make this move, because I agree with you that, I think Heineke, should get this experience. But in my personal opinion, if Washington doesn't sign Cam Newton, then he's done as a quarterback, at least as a starting level quarterback. I don't think another team's going to give him a shot.
I mean, I absolutely. I don't think the thing is you were saying Cam Newton wants to go play for Washington, but the question is, does Washington want Cam Newton to play for them?
Yeah.
And I think it's, like you said, it's a delicate subject. Cam Newton didn't really perform when he played for the Patriots. And I could see him being a backup quarterback or kind of like a Fitzpatrick where he bounces around a little bit. But I can't see him being sustainable anywhere. And especially since, I mean, after the season Fitzpatrick had last year, both when he came in behind to a down and he brought the Dolphins back a few times to win games, I think Fitzpatrick honestly is a little underrated.
Oh no, I definitely agree that Fitzpatrick's underrated. And he's kind of aged like a fine wine. He's gotten better with age, which is, you don't really see from a lot of, journeyman quarterbacks like this. He's kind of done the opposite of what a guy like Josh McCown did. Josh McCown, obviously, all the respect to McCown, was able to play into his 40s, was a warrior, when, the Eagles lost Carson Wentz in the playoffs. He came in and, played injured to, give them a shot to move on. And, obviously it was a very tough situation for him. But, when Ryan Fitzpatrick started off with teams like Buffalo and, until he really got to, I'd say the Jets later on in his career, he was, kind of a below average guy. Ever since then, something has clicked with him and he's been able to figure a lot of stuff out. So, I give Ryan Fitzpatrick a lot of credit. I hope that, he is able to come back after this. And I don't know how much longer he'll play, but if he is able to play, any bit longer after this, I'd be very happy to see it, because he's just, really built himself up as a likable guy at this point. But I got to tell you, man, I don't think that Cam Newton will accept a backup job anywhere. Ryan Fitzpatrick, kind of has some humility. And, when it came to them deciding, all right, we're going to have Tua go, you didn't see Ryan Fitzpatrick, causing any arguments. You didn't see him becoming a problem. I think if Cam Newton isn't the starting quarterback, then it's going to be an issue. And I think that's the reason why New England released him. Cam Newton even came out and said that, if he wasn't named the starting quarterback, New England thought that he was going to be a problem in the locker room. If Cam Newton is coming out and openly admitting that and not even calling BS on it, that worries me. So, I think that his career could be in jeopardy. I don't know how many other teams are willing to take a chance on him. Maybe if things in Houston don't go well with Tyrod Taylor, because he's always kind of been a wild card. He's kind of a more mobile version of what Ryan Fitzpatrick was, a journeyman that, can have some success at times, but other times can just fall off a cliff and, can sometimes just be a really, sometimes can just be snake bitten at the position. He's unfortunately has some really bad injuries that have, cost him his job. You think of the punctured lung out in Los Angeles. You think of the, I believe it was concussion that took him out when he was in Cleveland to let Baker Mayfield come in and take the position away from him there. So, it's been a really unfortunate position for him, but if things go bad for Tyrod Taylor, that's, I guess, another possible avenue that Cam Newton could look at. But besides that, I really don't have much else for him at this point. I think a lot of teams are content with their quarterbacks, and any team that isn't, I think, is going to just look to the draft at this point.
I mean, let me pose a question to you, right? So if you're the Washington football team and you're the head office, so you decide to bring in Cam Newton. Now, what happens 6 to 8 weeks from now when Ryan Fitzpatrick's healthy and comes back and makes the return, and you say, okay, Ryan Fitzpatrick is the starter, like you just said. Cam Newton admitted there would be problems if he was the backup, and now Washington doesn't want to put this and make it their problem. So they have to think long term too. It's like, great, we can bring him in as a short term solution, but what happens once Fitzpatrick is back?
Yeah.
And I think that's something Washington doesn't want to deal with. Obviously, New England didn't want to deal with it. They cut him. So, that's the other things to consider is what are the long term effects of us signing Cam Newton?
Yeah, I mean, there are a ton of long-term effects. You'd have to wonder that, if Washington got into a playoff stretch because, God forbid Dallas falls apart, which really on any year in the NFC can happen, that division's just a mess. So I think if Washington was to get into kind of a playoff hunt with it and they wanted to use Cam Newton, maybe more of like a Taysom Hill role and maybe not fully outright him to backup, but say, all right, we're going to use you in certain package plays. I think Cam Newton could do that, but I think an outright backup spot where he's got to be holding the clipboard and have the headset on, he's not going to do that. I think that he could do a Taysom Hill role, but anything beyond anything, less of that, I think he'll be completely against.
I just don't think, honestly, I think Cam Newton's career is just coming to an end. I think we've hit a point where there's no more to see of Cam Newton. He tried proving himself with Carolina, then he tried proving himself with New England. I just don't think that I think every team has realized he's not worth the headache that he brings to the team.
Yeah. And I
And we
mean,
all know it. He's
I'll
admitted
say
that
this:
he's
I don't
had it.
think that Cam Newton is a bad guy. I think that Cam Newton, has great leadership qualities. I think that he is a good human being for what he does for his community. I'm not dissing on Cam Newton the person at all, but I think Cam Newton the player rather just doesn't have it, for what a quarterback position the NFL is needing.
No, I would never. Cam Newton has done a lot, I know, for his community, and he's always posting about it. And there's nothing wrong with him there, but it's who he is in the locker room. Being a football player, we see it a lot. Is like, we have captains on the football team, obviously, and there's times where we might say, "Oh, this captain's doing this captain's doing that." The captain's somebody who's supposed to lead, but sometimes you have to lead off the field as well as on the field. And we've seen his interviews. We see some of the stuff he says, and he admitted he would cause problems if he was a backup quarterback, and nobody wants to put up with that.
No.
Nobody at the collegiate level, the NFL, the high school level. It doesn't matter how good you are. They used to tell us in high school all the time. It doesn't matter how good you are. The first 5 questions the college asks is who you are as a person. Are you coachable? Are you this? Are you that? Then are you good at football? And I can't imagine the process, isn't much different in the NFL. It's, is he coachable? This, that, and how good is he actually at football?
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. It is unfortunate that the career of Cam Newton looks like it could be coming to an end, but he's had an incredible career, and if he does get another shot to prove himself, I hope he can prove me wrong. But at this point, I think my consensus and yours as well is that it looks like it's getting towards the end here. But another quarterback that I want to talk about, and his impact on the league. He's had more of a positive impact lately, on the field, and has been more of a contributor, and that is Lamar Jackson. He ended up facing the Las Vegas Raiders on Monday Night Football, and my God, that game was a shootout. Did you check that thing?
I got back from practice. I got to watch the fourth quarter and overtime, so I got to
That
watch
thing
the most important part.
That thing was amazing, that game. I mean, Derek Carr, all the credit to him. A lot of people were asking for him to be out of a job, in Las Vegas. People were clamoring for Marcus Mariota, but Derek Carr, although he threw one pick, had 435 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and led them to a comeback victory. A lot of people like to kind of crap on Derek Carr, but he may not be like, this all-time gunslinging quarterback, but he's, a very capable guy at the position.
I mean, I thought he played a great. From what I saw, I thought he played a great game. I mean, it's hard to score in overtime. Win a game. We played a game in overtime the other day and we lost. You fall under the pressure, but he was able to, after coming back from being down under pressure, was able to go down and score to win the game. I mean, that's just, yeah. I mean, granted, you had to watch the game to be in awe, but he looked good out there. I can't argue. I mean, even last year, he looked good against Miami when we played. Granted, we had that lucky throw from Fitzpatrick where he was grabbing his face mask and it was a 15-yarder and we caught it. But even then, he's always looked good. I just think a lot of people overlook Derek Carr. Not sure why, but
Yeah.
I always thought as Derek Carr is a respected quarterback. Obviously he's not like the Tom Brady's of the league, and we don't talk of him to that regard. But I think he's another one who's very underrated and has clearly shown that he can perform when he has to.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. But unfortunately, the story of Derek Carr's comeback victory is, unfortunately being overshadowed by Lamar Jackson rather coming up short. And unfortunately, it's sometimes you can't really talk about the success of one player because sometimes the failure of one is just so dominating in the news cycle. And I do want to talk about that because Lamar obviously had a costly fumble that really ended up swinging the game. And, I think this is going to be, I'm not really, bashing on Lamar for ball control issues or anything like that. But, the Ravens this year, I was talking about them, for possibly being in some Super Bowl odds for me and making some improvement. But, after the injuries they've sustained at running back, it's very hard for me to look at them like that anymore, and I think that Lamar is going to have to carry a significant load of this team. I mean, he had had obviously led the team in passing, but also in rushing. He ran for 86 yards total on 12 attempts. So, I think Lamar's got a lot on his plate this season. It could be the type of thing where he just gets so much usage that, maybe you see him get another MVP season, but, this wasn't really one of those showings for him. I saw a stat that said, through five total starts, Jalen Hurts has more 300-yard passing games than Lamar Jackson does through 38 starts. And, Jalen Hurts has 2 and Lamar only has 1. And, looking at this game, Lamar Jackson also, just again had 235 passing yards, under 250. And, unfortunately, Lamar is an amazing runner. I think was able to pass up Michael Vick's, I don't know if it was rushing yards or rushing touchdown record just about a season or two ago. And, granted, he is an amazing athlete on the field. But, part of the quarterback position now in the NFL is that you do have to be able to throw the ball, efficiently. So at what point, is it now that we have to really start, criticizing Lamar? Because, he's been able to lead the Ravens to, 2 solid playoff runs. I know they've come up short, but, at this point, I think, we kind of have to say Lamar's got to get better at throwing the football. Otherwise, like, the Ravens are just going to be stuck in this, kind of area where, they have a ton of success, but then in the playoffs, it's just kind of all falls flat.
No, I have to agree with you. I mean, and no discredit to them. They played a great game. I mean, take any game to overtime is impressive, whether you were winning a half, losing a half, whatever.
Exactly.
They played a good game. But I 100% agree, and I've been saying this, and I always like to, bust Justin Tucker about it.
Oh yeah.
I'll walk up to him and be like, Lamar Jackson's a running back. He's not a quarterback. But it's starting to show. Lamar Jackson doesn't trust. It's almost like he doesn't trust himself throwing the ball, and defenses scheme to that. You'll notice teams will load the box against him because they know he's going to take off, and they don't have to play as many men in coverage because they know the slightest thing that he doesn't like, and he's just going to run. And I think Lamar Jackson has to work on sitting in the pocket, reading a defense, and actually breaking it down versus almost like panicking and just going, I'm going to run. And that's what he does. You see it. As soon as he doesn't like it, he goes, takes off. And teams are ready for it, especially in the playoffs when they have a whole year worth of film at that point to watch over and see exactly what his reads are and what he's doing when he doesn't like the reads. You'll see teams in the playoffs load the box up 6, 7, 8 guys. They'll leave everyone man to man, and Lamar will go to take off and he'll get nowhere. And then when his run game doesn't work, he'll try to just start chucking it as deep as he can instead of making the right reads because he starts panicking because he can't run for yards. Then he starts making bad throws, and that's when the games fall apart for him. And we've seen that every time they've made the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this, Lamar Jackson, I don't know. It's a very tough situation for me because, you see Lamar go out there and, I don't know. This is what I wanted to tell you. Defenses are essentially baiting Lamar Jackson to throw, like how NBA defenses bait Ben Simmons to shoot a 3-pointer. It's not as bad because Ben Simmons just will refuse to shoot a 3-pointer. I know Lamar actually will pass the football, and that it's just something he needs to get better at. While Ben Simmons will refuse to shoot a free throw or a 3-pointer, which frustrates me to no end, and because it doesn't even look like he's willing to even try to get better at it. But it is something Lamar's gonna have to pick up. Even looking at Michael Vick, who a lot of people compare Lamar Jackson to, even though they are fairly different in their style, but being very run dominant, obviously is, the key factor in what a lot of people take away from them. Obviously when Mike Vick was with the Falcons, he was, insanely run based, very similar to Lamar. And then when he went on his 2 or so year, quote unquote, vacation from the league, I won't get into too much with what happened there. I have, read a history book on that. But when he went on his little vacation from the league, he came back to Philadelphia and he actually was a decent thrower of the football, was able to, obviously still had some solid legs, but, developed into a, semi-decent pocket passer. It wasn't anything. He wasn't Dan Marino for your sake or Joe Montana or anything like that, but he was a solid enough pocket passer that it was passing, in the running, just made him, that much more dynamic of a quarterback. Lamar has got to get that. And, I don't know when that's going to develop for him. Hopefully it doesn't take him a 2-year vacation. I'm not saying that Lamar is that kind of guy. I'm not defaming Lamar in any sort of way, but I hope it doesn't take, a little break from the league for him to have to do something like that. I think that, just get him in with some, all-time quarterbacks. I don't know if Dan Marino does throwing camps for quarterbacks like that, but get him with some of these all-time throwers. Like, I don't know, get him with a guy like Drew Brees, a guy like Peyton Manning, even though I know they have noodle arms at this point, but they can maybe teach him some of the techniques of standing back in the pocket and, learning to read defenses. It's something that, he's going to have to learn, especially as he gets older. And, while his mobility is always going to be part of his game until the day he retires, he's, when it does start to, when he can't do it as frequently, the ability to stand back in the pocket and pass is going to be, needed.
I just think the thing is with Lamar Jackson is this is a bold statement, but we saw it the other way around. Ryan Tannehill was a wide receiver. Came
Yes.
in, they should transition him to quarterback. They thought there was a better fit. What stops them from taking Lamar Jackson and putting him somewhere else? Or putting, think about it. It's a genuine idea. He's athletic. He's talented. Granted, it's so far out there, but it's happened before. What stops a team from taking him and actually utilizing him somewhere better?
It's
He's
happened
fast.
before. I mean, Tannehill happened at Alabama, and he was kind of they used him in both aspects at the time. Tannehill worked. I think, for it being a college offense, you were able to say, all right, we're going to put this guy here and just see what works. And that worked very well for them. I don't think you can do that necessarily with Lamar Jackson based on how much looking at the contract you've given the guy, everything like you've given him the money to be the starting quarterback. You've given him starting quarterback money. And I don't think at this point you can pull the plug on him and say you're going to make him a running back, because that's way too much money to be paying a running back. I think at this point it's, you'll be getting the best bang for your buck if you teach him how to pass rather than just giving up on him and putting him at another position, in my opinion.
No, I agree. It was just a point because people are always like, oh, he likes to run, da da da. Like, why don't we, I crossed my mind when he first get drafted, and everyone's like, oh, all he does is run and run and run and run. I'm like, there's 10 other positions on the football field, on the offense, besides quarterback. What stops the team from using him somewhere else? Even if you used him as a package, kind of like, all right, we need him for these kind of plays and so for these. The Tennessee Titans did it for a short time with Mariota. The Dolphins did it this past Sunday. Whenever they were in short field, they put in Brissett because he's bigger, and they used him to get momentum to get those first downs.
Very true.
What stops teams from using him in that aspect? Granted, at this point, it's too far. Like you said, they're paying him way too much money. But these are things that should have been considered now. Here you have a guy who's fast, who can sling the ball if he has to, short yardage situations. Why can a team take him and use him hand in hand with another guy and just make themselves way better?
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I mean, I just have to say they've put way too much money in it at this point. I said that at that point, but it'll definitely be a thing to watch with the Ravens this year. I'm excited to see how they will do with basically all their running backs, catching the injury bug. They now have a backfield of Le'Veon Bell and Devontae Freeman, which 5 years ago would have looked absolutely stacked as a backfield. People would have thought that, that was like a Madden Ultimate Team backfield. But I digress by saying, it'll be interesting to see. Running back lifespans don't last that long, so I'll be interested to see how this team does. And unfortunately, we've burned through a lot of topics on the show tonight. So we got one last thing to talk with you guys. And, it seems that this topic comes up, every fall. I put up a post about it saying, and I quoted a guy who ended up saying, it's only fitting that in fall, the leaves start to change. The air gets a little bit, the air gets a little bit chillier, and news of Josh Gordon being reinstated comes out. And my God, this man has 1 million freaking chances. Like, I can't get over it. Josh Gordon, when I saw him get the news of him getting reinstated again, I'm just like, you can't be serious. Now, trust me, I'm a big Josh Gordon supporter. I think that, what he's gone through, and, I believe his personal struggles, I think that he has struggled with, with substances beyond marijuana and beyond, different things like that. I've heard of the struggles that he's gone through. So I feel for him greatly. But the fact that he's gotten this many chances is crazy.
I mean, I only saw it quick. I've been busy since it came out, so I haven't really had time to dive too deep into it. But I have to agree, he's gotten too many chances. You know how they say life only gives you so many chances? This man is the definition of life gives you only gives you so many chances, and he keeps taking them all for granted. So I guess now only time will tell. Is he actually going to use this chance to do something, or are we just going to be back where we were when he got banned from the league the first time?
Yeah, I mean, I know you weren't given a lot of time to digest the news of him coming back, but I feel like, just hearing so many reports of, oh, Josh Gordon's been reinstated. I think you were just ready for a response with it regardless, just because it's happened so many times at this point. And, frankly, I wouldn't mind Josh Gordon coming back to the league. But, I think for his personal sake now, whenever he's out of the league, I don't know what it is. He manages to get clean very easily. He'll, like as soon as like he's out of the league, he has like, I don't know his personal struggles, but it seems like when he's out of the league, he's able to get clean and he doesn't have a ton of problems when he's there. It's for some reason when he comes back to football, I think his tenure with the Patriots was, the longest that you didn't really hear a lot of Josh Gordon, substance abuse stories. It was surprisingly long the amount of time that it was with Josh Gordon. So, I mean, you hear all these stories, and it's like, what can this guy do at this point? Like, I don't know. Like, I almost think that at this point, it might be better for him to be out of football because he seems to have his substance issues under control. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but from an outsider's perspective, that's what I can see.
It's time for him to toss in the towel and quit the dream of football. I mean, and they always say football can be a lot on people, especially professionally. I mean, I know all the time here they talk about how collegiate sports can stress you out and can mentally, screw around with you. So I can't even imagine at the professional level, just
I can't.
Your life is literally football all day, every day. And for some guys, I guess they look to drugs to help them forget that. But if this is a reoccurring pattern, which it has been, at some point you just got to toss in the towel yourself and say, I can't handle football in my life. It's too much for me to handle. Clearly, we've all seen it's too much. It leads him down a road that nobody should ever go down.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's time for him to just hang up the towel and walk away.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for him, it should definitely be on the table. I mean, he seems to be very excited about coming back again. I mean, as he does all the time, it seems that, as soon as he's given the chance, he's always psyched to come back, but something just seems to go wrong for this guy. And I really, really do feel for him. I want to stress that I do feel for him, as a person and, as a player. When Josh Gordon was in the league and, performing and not having to deal with all these issues, he's an electrifying player. He's an amazing guy to, when he was on the field, even when he came back with the Patriots and definitely wasn't in his prime, he was a solid target for us, so the thing I have to ask you is, if, as a Dolphins fan or even as a Patriots fan or just any team in general that, needs some wide receiver help, is this a guy you take a flyer on? Cause he's kind of a high risk, high reward kind of guy, pretty much. If Josh Gordon, you get him at his best, he's a very nice, deep threat receiver, can provide a lot of explosiveness, but, you have to, at least factor in the idea that, with any week, he could, be off your team for, the rest of the season, at least. Like, if you're the Dolphins, would you want your team to take a flyer on this guy?
Absolutely not.
Really?
Here's the thing. I like I was saying earlier when we were talking about Cam Newton, I'd rather have an average player who doesn't cause drama, who I know is going to be there all 17 weeks, granted, unless they get hurt, than have someone who's lights out, but next week could go off the deep end.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's for a lot of people, again, no matter what level of football it is, they will take an average player who has their head on straight than somebody who's really, really good, but could blow it all within a day.
Yeah. I think for me, I would probably say if I'm the Patriots and you have Mac Jones, obviously they spent a lot of money in free agency on offensive weapons. And I'm so grateful for that. Like $200 freaking million on guys like Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar. It's a very nice defensive haul. And, you pair that with guys like N'Keal Harry, Jacoby Myers. It's a great offense that, we're starting to build there. And I think it'll be a great core when, they all gel together. But, the one thing I guess you could say about Josh Gordon in his time in New England is that, besides, when he first came into the league and had that amazing season with the Cleveland Browns, his time in New England was the longest time he was able to, stay clean from what a lot of people understand. So if I'm the Patriots, I would, I'd at least have some interest in it. I know that you'd probably stay off of it, but my hope would be that Bill Belichick could, somehow keep him right. I don't really think that it's in the best interest of Josh to come back, but if he does, I'd have to say the Pats would be his best bet, just on the fact that, I think Bill, runs a very tight ship over there, and he'd be able to, I hope keep him under control.
I mean, it's just a cycle, and fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So if it happened once,
fool me seven times at this point. Like,
yeah. So like it happened once. okay, whatever, nobody knew. But now all these teams that have taken chances on him, it's like, come on, it's happened 6 times, 7 times. How many more times do you have to see it for you to realize this guy is not worth having on your team?
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess in my sake, like, you have Tua and, you just got a first round wide receiver in Jalen Waddle. That guy looks like he's going to be really special. So, you do have some solid options over there at receiver. You have Mike Gesicki too at tight end, along with some great other options. I think just for me right now, having a rookie quarterback, I think I just want that security blanket. That's just me personally. But, I don't know. Any final thoughts that you have?
I mean, I was just going to ask, how much of a security blanket can a guy who you won't even know if he's going to be there next week really be? How can he be a security blanket?
Yeah.
He could relapse literally week one that get him back on the team.
Yeah.
You can make the playoffs and then he relapses the week before the conference championship.
Yeah, I think that's why if you were to bring him back, Josh Gordon isn't necessarily, you're not going to bring Josh Gordon in. He's not going to be a one anymore. He's not going to be that guy when you bring him back onto the team. So, the only thing I guess you could say is, you bring back Josh Gordon and he's able to, I guess in my mind, be somewhat of a number 3 kind of deep threat guy. And, for me, I don't know, you could say the idea of him being a security blanket. I think for, maybe that wasn't the best phrasing for me. Maybe he could just be like, kind of extra leverage for the Patriots going into the playoffs. But, all in all, I can't wait to see what happens next in the NFL. But Sean, it has been a wild first week of the NFL season. I can't believe it's only been 1 week and we have all these freaking storylines. It's incredible. And I got to thank you so much for coming on the show, man. It has been a blast to have you on.
No, honestly, this was probably one of the craziest week ones I've ever seen. I mean, we were talking about it last night. There was 9 upsets
Yeah,
this past weekend.
It's ridiculous. I mean, you were able to, talk by talking about it last night. Obviously, you went on our friend Adam Wright's show, the Fumble Brewski podcast. Go watch that episode with him as soon as you're done watching this one. But, with that being said, we are now officially down to the wire, which means that we're going to do a quick little run through of everything we talked about this episode, and we will send you guys off on your way. Obviously, we're very grateful to have Sean on the show, talk with him about the latest across all sports. We introduced him to you guys. And on the show today, we talked about our thoughts on Mac Jones' regular season debut, Matthew Stafford's debut at the LA Rams, Jameis Winston's dominating victory over the Green Bay Packers, and whether Aaron Rodgers wants to be with this Green Bay team. We also talked about whether Washington is Cam Newton's last chance as a NFL starter, and as well as, the Ravens versus Raiders dramatic overtime ending. And we ended things talking about Josh Gordon's future in the NFL with the news of him, reportedly being reinstated. It hasn't been official, the reinstatement yet. I think he still needs Roger Goodell to sign off on at this point. But the NFLPA did come out and say that he has cleared all the programs. So they're saying that like he is able to, get it. So it should be a formality that he'll be reinstated. So we'll have to see where that goes. But great week 1. I can't, football is back, people, and this season is just getting started. We have an extra week of it too. So it's, the storylines are going to be unbelievable this year. But from Down to the Wire, I'm Brian Costa.
I'm Sean Howe.
And we'll see you guys next time. Take care.